Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Being born, bred, and educated in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, which is a community that many of us know of as the location of the decentralization movement. I am a proud beneficiary of a culturally competent education. So it saddens me that when I go into schools within my district and I have people, administrators, telling me it's very important for us to change the achievement gap between white students and colored students, right? And this was just a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I was sitting in this room with a member of Congress and other members of her staff, and it was appalling that there are still people in our community who has this mindset about our children. Not only that, they were talking about 5-year-olds. And when a 5-year-old gets into trouble, the first time they're first offenders, the second time they're second offenders. And we're talking about 5-year-olds. We have a serious issue as it relates to restorative justice, where our young black girls in our communities are being put on suspension at astronomical rates over so many other communities within our city. It is my intention that we not necessarily return back to a system of what used to be, but that we do figure out what is the best case scenario for us to be able to do what we need to do now. We need some semblance of local governance. Our parents want to be involved. In fact, I had 2 parents who recently applied to be on the Community Education Council that we all know and love as a governing body for our communities. But guess what? These 2 parents had some interaction with the law when they were 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. Now they're 40 and 50 years old, and when they apply to the Community Education Council, their applications are being denied. And we have to go through all sorts of loops and boundaries in order for them to be admitted just to sit on an advisory committee over the education of their children. So I think that while mayoral control may work for some, it may work in this instance. I'm not sure. I'm no educational expert, and it may work for each and every one of you. But for the people of Ocean Hill, Brownsville, for the people of the 55th Assembly District who are calling me as we speak to tell me their feelings on mayoral control and the way that they want me to vote in this particular scenario, I stand in solidarity with them. So today, I will also stand with my colleagues and encourage us to really take a serious look at the way our education is being dispensed. And I just want to say for today, in the year 2016, that our schools are still inherently separate and inherently unequal. And this is something that we have to do a whole lot about. And today, I'm taking a stance to say, please take a look at this and vote in the negative with us. Thank you.
Ms. Peoples-Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on what I think is very important legislation. Excuse me, I will agree with a number of things that my colleagues have said, is that in this country, the way education is disseminated is different in majority communities than it is in minority communities. That doesn't matter whether you're in New York City or Buffalo, or Rochester, or Syracuse, or quite frankly, Utica. Things happen different for students of color than they do for majority students. I don't think that has anything necessarily to do with the governance, but it has something to do with the internal culture of the organizations that say it's okay and that continue to allow it to happen. And so I personally am an advocate for mayoral control for the city of Buffalo. And, you know, there's some people who thought, you know, it's better to have an elected school board. Well, we have an elected school board in Buffalo. We don't get to see the budget that they vote on. We don't get to approve the budget. All we have to do is Once they do it, that's it. That's what we have to deal with. That is not a good system either. Now, there's other thing that I agree with my colleagues on, is that we do need to have a good look at this, but we have to look at it from the perspective that is being delivered in a different way to students of color than it is to majority students. And so if we don't look at the analysis in that way, we're not going to come up with the right solution. This past year in our school board elections, special interest won again, but special interest always wins. Quite frankly, special interest wins when we run. That's our interest. We make sure that we win. Before this current election, the business community took over the entire school board. The total business just totally took it over because they can. There's a process that people go through, and they won. This time they lost. But that doesn't mean it makes it better for the students, because quite frankly, in Buffalo, we didn't have an elected school board until the early 70s. Prior to that, we had one superintendent who was competent. He was a superintendent the entire time I was in school, from kindergarten to 12th grade. When we got to elected school boards, things begin to go in the direction of special interests as opposed to the interests of the children and, quite frankly, their parents. And so while I sympathize with my colleagues from New York City who have some problem with supporting this bill today, I can tell you without a doubt, I will support it, because I think if you have one person at the top who can be held accountable, as opposed to multiple people who can't be held accountable because there's an election coming, and believe me, special interests will put not only its money but its feet in the community to make sure they get what they want. And they have been getting what they want in many communities across this state, and as a result of it, we have students, not just in the last 10 years, not just in the last 20 years, but for the last 50 years, we have students who are graduating from high school who are not yet ready to go to college. And something has to be done about that, and I don't think you can start by saying that we need to just totally change the system of governance. I think you need to sit down with the people who make the decisions, and sometimes you need to let parents have a choice. They shouldn't all be forced to have to go to the public school that, quite frankly, we know doesn't always deliver the best results. People need to be able to make that decision for themselves. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage my colleagues to think about this from the perspective not just of the emotion of it all, but the reality of it all. And it's that, quite frankly, public education has not worked to the extent that it can for black and brown children, not just in this state, but in this country for a long time. Until we handle that realization, we're not going to fix the problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Nolan.
To close. That's what I was told. I'm just...
And
Whatever you
that's
say,
what it
Mr.
looks like
Speaker,
to me,
whatever
Ms.
you
Nolan,
say.
but-
Okay, let me just, if I can, colleagues, talk a little bit about some facts and my views on why I believe this bill should pass with an overwhelming vote today. I want to talk a little bit about, as we did last year, the subject of whether we centralize or decentralize our children's schools is one that has been debated by our majority over the entire tenure of our majority, and going back even further when the other side controlled the chamber. As my colleague from Buffalo just alluded to, this is an issue that affects every part of our country, all school districts in our state. Do we centralize? How much control? What do we give? How do we keep the focus to be on the children? I'm a parent of a New York City public school student, and though I am very mindful of the concerns that have been expressed, no system is perfect, I want to assure my colleagues who are not from the city of New York that I would not have sent my son to a New York City public school for 18 years if I thought the system was a bad system. And I also want to point out that my son has attended 3 New York City public schools that were majority-minority schools. In every one of those schools, there is a diverse group of young people from various backgrounds learning in a highly structured, positive way. And the experience that we have had, that I have had as a parent of a child in the New York City public schools, has been one that no system is perfect. But I want to talk about one personal incident that convinced me that mayoral control is the best, the least worst, I guess I would say, just like democracy. We're not so perfect either, but we're probably, as Aristotle said, the least worst, right? We're better than a monarchy. We're better than an aristocracy, all right? My son in kindergarten mayoral control had started 2 years before that. And we visited the school. They allow kindergarten parents to come a little bit sooner so that they can get used to it. And we walked in on the principal and 2 kindergarten teachers crying, tears in their eyes, because books had been delivered on time. For the first time in their teaching and leadership careers, the geniuses at the school board level were finally gone. The school boards that were corrupt, the school boards that didn't get the books in on time. And they were there, humbled, happy that for once a centralized system had been put in place that finally brought supplies in. The stories of the school boards that never got the supplies to the children have filled books in this city, have filled books in this state. We have to be I hate to use the word realistic, because there's a suggestion that somehow if you're realistic, that means you're selling out the children. Nothing could be further from the truth. Anyone old enough to remember what community school boards did in New York City has to vote yes on this bill. However imperfect mayoral control has been under Mayor Bloomberg or Mayor de Blasio, however imperfect under its various chancellors, anyone who remembers what went on, my district elected a member of the Ku Klux Klan to our school board because of the stupid proportional voting system that this genius legislature in 1969 afflicted on the city of New York. Are you kidding me that we want to go back to that? Are you joking? We want to go back to a proportional vote system that put crazy people on school boards? 59 of them? You couldn't transfer your child to a high school in another district without the records being lost? We have to be honest with ourselves. Look in the mirror, colleagues. We are not educators. I would love to see my colleague from Brooklyn head up the school system, but he's not an educator either. We have to try, or maybe he is. I don't want to say nothing bad about nobody because I love him. But the point is, we need professional educators, and mayoral control brought us professional educators. I am not a professional educator. I am a parent, a proud parent of a New York City public school student who received a better education under a centralized mayoral control system than he would have gotten under the old system. When we look at recent advances in pre-K, middle school, adult ed, and after school, it has been a unified system that has provided those opportunities. When we look at the changes we need to make to our high schools to have not just choice, but practical, community-based schools, it is a more centralized mayoral control system that has contributed that. In 2009, when I took on this committee, we had 5 hearings on mayoral control, and we made a number of changes in mayoral control that I think improved it for the better, including, so we talk about parent engagement, the time, the place, and the agenda of regular board meetings publicly available at least 10 days before. The regents don't even do that. Many of you who represent local school boards don't do it. You tell me you want to have it in your area. Where there's a proposal for significant change in school utilization, the superintendents, their role has been strengthened. They must provide notice to parents, the community education councils, and hold joint public hearings with the chancellor. Public hearings take place in each of the community districts regarding the district's performance, finances, and goals. Community superintendents are now required to have at least 2 public forums each year in conjunction with that parent council. There is a public review. Every parent can go online or go to the school office and read the quality review of their school. I can tell you, I was a member of this legislature for years before we centralized the system. If you think I could go into a school in my district and read a quality review before mayoral control, I have a bridge down in Brooklyn I can sell you. It wasn't available. It didn't exist. We couldn't find out the budgets for our individual schools in our districts. We couldn't understand why the school in your district had after school and the school in your district didn't. We couldn't get answers as to why physics was only offered in some schools and not others. We have worked hard the last few years as a legislature in our oversight responsibilities. We just had a hearing in the fall on the community school model and on receivership. We have used our oversight to push and prod the city to improve its mayoral control system. And again, I don't pretend to say it's a perfect system, but anyone who was around in the old days, and I'm old enough to remember them, cannot, in my opinion, in good conscience, with a light heart, no one could vote for the old system. And if we don't pass a mayoral control, because some of our colleagues on the other side want to have a little fun at the expense of the mayor, or want to have a little fun at the expense of the children, we are doing a grave disservice to those children, because contracting has improved, the availability of resources and services has been equalized much more than it was. It's available to our children. My son got a great education in the New York City public schools.
Ms.
And I urge my
Smiley-Yatakis,
colleagues
why do you
to
rise?
vote yes on this
Will the
legislation.
sponsor
I'm
yield?
just finishing. But I'll have
Ms. Smiley-Yatakis,
Will the sponsor yield?
will you yield, Ms. Nolan?
Yes.
I just had two questions for you. You had mentioned that we are not educators, right?
Well, you may be. I'm sure there are many members here that are
Oh, there
former
may be some
teachers.
that are educators.
There are a number of people here, I'm sure, who are former teachers. I cast no
But it is
aspersions.
important that educators,
But I consider myself primarily a politician, as I'm sure most members here do, and a parent. I consider myself, more than anything else, a parent of a public school child.
but it is important for educators to be the ones who do control and dictate the policies of the City of New York.
I don't want anybody to dictate policies in the City of New York, but I think it's important, and has been important, that we have a more centralized system that highlights the roles of educators, and I include not only the chancellor, but the 32 community superintendents, of which, as the colleague knows, on Staten Island, there is one for the island.
And I agree with you, which is why when I brought up my remarks earlier, I had said that it is important that the chancellor be an educator. So this is not about politics or because the mayor is a Democrat, as you've indicated. This is more about making sure that those who are in control of the public education system are educators. And right now, this is an extension of the status quo, which does not require the chancellor of the City of New York to be an educator, and it does not require the members of the panel of education policy to be made up of educators. And so I ask you, if you truly believe that educators are the ones that should be putting together the policy of the City of New York's education system, then why do you not support changes that would reflect that?
I couldn't disagree with my colleague more, and I think the facts are incorrect. Every one of the community school superintendents has to be pass a whole licensure exam. The chancellor of the city system, if it's not someone with an educator, has to go to the Board of Regents and ask for a waiver. There's extensive educational requirements, including advanced degrees, that involve all the people in senior roles at the Department of Education.
Is the chancellor-
panel for, if I could just answer the question,
Sure.
the panel for educational policy is composed of parents of public school students. As many of my colleagues know, those of us who were around during the community school board days, many of the people who served on those boards had no interest in children. One wondered why they ran. They did not have children in the public school system. They were not that, you never understood why they ran. They had a political agenda of the Klan or whatever crazy thing that they put out there, and they would get just enough votes in the crazy proportional system to have a seat on one of these boards where they wreaked mayhem. The current system supports professionalism and expertise, and indeed has extensive licensing requirements for the leadership.
The panel on public education is not made up of parents. It is only 13 members, 8 of them are appointed by the mayor. Only 1 is required to be a parent. Is that correct?
No, 2 of them are required. That's a change we made, that we required at least 2 to be parents. And both Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor de Blasio, the vast majority of the appointments were parents of public school children.
But the majority
Current
of the
public
13 are not required to be parents.
No, but most of them have been. And as you know, or maybe you don't know, your colleagues in the Senate have been the single biggest reason it hasn't been an absolute requirement, but it is a requirement for 2, and almost all of them have been. And most of the borough presidents, I believe, they have to appoint, all 5 of the borough presidents must appoint a parent, and they have done so.
And are the remaining members...
So that's 9 of the 13.
And the remaining members are appointed by the mayor with no requirement that they are either a parent or an educator.
I think that it's an incorrect assessment on your part. Of the 13, 9 must be
Yes, and
parents.
the remaining, I said the remaining of the 13.
They're not required to be, but the practical matter has been that most have, and that is to give a variety of opinion. There is certainly some desire for people with a variety of experiences. I don't think that takes away from it, but the bulk of the people, and of course the people on the CEC, the Community Education Council.
So the majority of the panel, as is made up right now, and what we are looking to extend today, would not require that the majority of the panel be made up of educations.
That's incorrect. This law extends mayoral control for the CECs, for the Panel for Educational Policy, for the mayor. The CECs are required to be parents. Each of the borough president appointees are required to be parents. 2 of the mayor's appointees are required to be parents. There are a handful of other people that don't have to be because presumably they have other expertise in contracts or law and they play a role. All the community superintendents must be licensed at PhD level and beyond to, or extensive superintendent licensure to continue. The whole point of mayoral control is a certain amount of expertise and professionalism that was not present before. And so it standardizes it. But it gives a major role to parents. In my district, a number of people had to come off the community school board because they were not parents. So now on the CECs, you have to be parents. And when your child graduates, I think you can stay for a year, if you're really into it, but at some point you have to roll off. And that was a good thing, too.
So 5 borough presidents appoint parents. 2 of the mayor's appointees are parents. That means 8 of them, what's that number? 7 of them are parents.
I don't know. I went to parochial school. I don't add as well as people in the public school.
That means the remaining 6 are not parents. That means, and they're not educators. They don't have to be required to be. My point is that we are not requiring the majority of the members of the panel of education policy, those who are dictating the policy for the New York City education system, to be educators. And we're not requiring in this legislation that the chancellor of the city of New York be an educator.
That's incorrect. Mr.
Okay.
Speaker, that's incorrect.
Then how did
I can only answer the
Kathy
gentlewoman's
Black get an
questions
appointment then?
If it's incorrect.
Yes.
So you asked her to yield, you want questions, you'll ask her questions, she'll
I would
answer.
like to know how
Right.
Kathy Black was appointed chancellor if we are not requiring that the chancellor of the city of New York be an educator.
She received a waiver from the New York State Department of Education at the urging of Mayor Bloomberg.
Little loopholes. I forgot about the loopholes.
No, excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I am shocked that my colleague, who is such an expert in so many things, is unaware of something that was reported in every major newspaper, including the Staten Island Advance, at the time. It's well known. It's done all over the state. And
I know. Well, I know you are. I know you're a Mr. Speaker.
Everybody, we're going to operate with respect here. You may disagree. I heard all of the ahs and the ohs. It's not required. Individuals are debating issues that are important to them. We will hold and respect ourselves as colleagues. That's how the House runs. We will not talk over each other. We'll ask questions, and we'll answer. Ms. Corwin, you rise. Mr. Morelli, you rise? Good.
No.
Now, do you have a question?
Actually, no. I'll just speak on the bill for the remainder of.
Thank you, Mr.
my
Speaker.
minute.
You're welcome. Hold on. You don't get to do that
I don't
because
get to do that?
you're on Kathy's time. So you'll have to come back for your second time if you
Maybe
want
I
to do
should
that.
maybe I should ask for more questions. So.
All right?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
My pleasure. Mr. Barron.
Speaker, just to respond to some of what the sponsor said, so many inaccuracies, like there's more professionalism now under mayoral control. Yes, they did waiver the incredibly incompetent Kathy Black. They also wavered the incompetent Joel Klein. He wasn't qualified either. So we don't have a whole lot of new professionalism under mayoral control. That's not true. And because you got a KKK elected to your district, you need to do more community organizing to stop that. These anecdotal things about your son in school is not a reflection of what's happening in the entire school system. People can always give personal anecdotes. I can say, for those people who are glad to get the books now, how many teachers come to my office saying they got to make Xerox copies because they don't have enough textbooks. And they have to put out money in their own pocket because they don't have enough things to do the education that has to be done. So don't be fooled by this. It is not better under mayoral control when it comes to professionalism. And because you're having community hearings, parents have no power. Yes, the mayor can appoint parents to the PEP, but those parents are parents he controls. So it's not like parents are getting there independently through some election process. They're being appointed by a mayor who controls their votes. And evidence of that is when the appointees under Bloomberg didn't do what he said, he removed them. So for people who think that mayoral control is a good thing and that the school boards, here's how they fool you. We don't want to go back to those terrible school boards. We're not talking about that. We're talking about putting out a commission that will determine a new school governance structure. You can't go from a democratic process of elections and then just say that the elections were terrible. And there are some school boards that actually worked in New York City. Not every single school board was corrupt and didn't work. There was corruption in everything, as we can see what's happening in the political scene today. There's a whole lot of corruption. So you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's some reforms that need to happen. Once again, don't let people fool you and say we're going back to the same thing. We're talking about going forward with something new and different when we put a commission together accompanied with one-year extension of mayoral control. This is extending the problem, and everything the sponsor mentioned that was not good under the school boards is happening under mayoral control. And the little things that they mentioned about now that they're meeting with people, they're listening more, parents have zero power. People have zero power. The mayor has all the power. And the only thing that matters when you're dealing with policy is who has the power to make it. And it's all lies in a mayor. So when people tell you of their personal stories, it's not a reflection of the entire system.
Ms. Walker, second time.
Second opportunity, Mr. Speaker. I want to just stress that this is not an indictment on our public school system. It's not an indictment on the mayor. Neither is it that of the chancellor or that of a wonderful community education council or even that of a very prestigious superintendent like the ones who are operating within our communities. But what we are saying is that the system that we have in place is a broken system. And we can't continue in allowing ourselves to do the same thing over and over, knowing and recognizing that it is not working, that it has not worked. No, I was not around during a situation with school boards, except as a student. And I'm not saying that we need to return back to that point. But I would like to stress, as did my colleagues, that we need a serious review of this system, of this process, so that when I have to deal with a renewal school in my district that may be, phasing out or doing whatever it is that it's about to do, and a new principal is appointed to that school, I don't find out about it when I show up at the school at career day. And that person says hi, and then she whips away, and I never see her again. It has to be some semblance of community participation in the way that our children is being educated. And I am just saying that we are not doing that at optimum performance under this present system. So again, I encourage us not to just go along to get along, but that we really do what's right here for our children. So again, thank you for the second opportunity.
Mr. Dendecker. Mr. Perry.